Okay, let's dive in. We've got a fascinating stack of sources here, all zeroing in on artificial intelligence.
Hmm.
But not just the cool tech stuff. We're looking at the really complex, sometimes, well, unsettling questions AI is forcing us to confront.
Yeah. I mean, you see it everywhere now, don't you?
Mhm.
Generating text, solving problems.
Automating things we really thought needed a human touch.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And the potential is, well, it's massive. The sources we looked at really highlight that.
Like what specifically?
Things like improved standardization, automation, personalized services, huge productivity gains,
Right.
and tackling problems that were just too complex before. The
Mhm.
capability it adds is, undeniable.
Right. But the material you've shared, it pivots pretty quickly to the flip side.
It does, yeah.
It highlights the serious distress and anxiety AI is generating in society.
That's a direct quote from one of the papers, yeah.
So this deep dive is about unpacking that the socioeconomic problems, the risks, and the tangled legal landscape AI is creating.
Exactly. We've pulled from a few different places, academic articles, a white paper, some news coverage too.
So a good mix.
Yeah. Together, they give us a really broad view of these challenges, I think.
And our mission today, for you listening, is to distill these sources. What are the major challenges AI is forcing us to grapple with,
Mm-hmm.
especially around accountability, like who or what is responsible when an AI does something?
That's a huge one.
And that really mind-bending question, like, could AI ever have, legal status,
Yeah.
personhood?
So starting with the legal side,
Yeah.
the sources make it crystal clear. Our existing legal systems are playing catch up, big time.
Right. The tech moves so fast.
Exactly. The sheer speed and nature of AI development mean current laws just weren't designed for this.
It feels like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, doesn't it?
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
These modern challenges, they demand that legal systems globally, well, they need to urgently develop new ways to regulate AI sustainably.
And despite how widespread AI systems are becoming,
Yeah.
the sources point out these big gaps in the actual regulations.
Huge gaps. And because AI is inherently global, operating across borders, in virtual spaces,
The problems aren't just local.
not at all.
Yeah.
Potential problems can pop up nationally, internationally.
Hmm.
It really underlines why countries need to collaborate more on prevention.
Makes sense.
Actually, one paper we looked at identified two main types of legal risk here: direct and indirect.
Okay, so given that legal landscape, that sort of uncertainty, here's a question the sources keep coming back to.
Which is?
If an AI is doing the action, who's on the hook when something goes wrong? Who's liable?
Ah, yes, liability. This is one of the most complex legal knots the sources dive into.
Why is it so complex?
Well, traditional legal systems, as the sources explain, they're built on very human concepts, right? Intention, action.
Things a person does.
Exactly. But AI systems can become incredibly complex. They can evolve, learn, exhibit behaviors that weren't explicitly programmed.
So applying those old rules.
It gets incredibly difficult. Yeah,
The sources mentioned specific examples, didn't they?
they did. Things like risks in robotic surgery
Mm.
or damages caused by products like driverless vehicles, worker robots.
Right, real world scenarios.
And in those cases, courts are really struggling. They're trying to apply existing legal theories, but as you said, square peg, round hole.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the European Parliament actually wrestled with this back in 2017.
Oh, really? What did they conclude?
Well, their resolution, 2152-103, INL, it actually suggested it was basically impossible to hold the AI itself directly liable for harming someone.
Impossible. So who could be held liable then?
The resolution pointed towards the usual suspects, you could say.
Yeah.
The manufacturer, the operator, the owner, or maybe the user.
Okay, so humans are still in the loop for liability.
Yes, but the really tricky part, which the sources emphasize, is how you divide that liability.
Ah, right. Between the manufacturer, owner, user.
Exactly. How do you split that responsibility?
Yeah.
It's a major legal challenge, trying to balance the interests of, citizens who might be harmed, the businesses developing or using the AI.
And the state trying to regulate it all?
Precisely. There's no easy formula there.
And it's not just about physical harm, is it? Some sources mention AI in HR.
Oh, yeah, that was fascinating. Companies using AI for things like employee selection, interviewing, hiring.
Sometimes specifically to avoid human bias.
That's the idea, yeah. But the irony is, the AI itself can introduce new risks of discrimination.
Now so.
Well, these AI tools might access or infer information like religious beliefs, ethnic background, political views, stuff employers are legally prohibited from asking about directly.
Wow. So using AI to prevent bias could actually lead to violating human rights provisions.
It's a real risk highlighted in the material.
Yeah.
A concerning twist, as you say.
Okay, so moving from liability for harm,
Yeah.
what about when AI creates something? Intellectual property.
Yeah, another big headache for the legal system.
Hmm.
AI is generating scientific papers, literature, art, music.
Stuff that normally has clear authorship and ownership.
Right. And the sources pose some critical questions here. Like, do we even need IP incentives for AI innovation? AI doesn't have the same motivations as a human creator.
Good point. What else?
How do we balance human creativity with AI output? Does the whole IP system need fundamental changes to protect or even just categorize AI-created works?
And the million-dollar question, who owns it?
Exactly. Is it the developer who made the AI program itself, the company that owns the AI, the user who gave it the prompt?
It gets complicated really fast.
It really does. And it touches on that deeper sort of philosophical debate.
About creativity itself.
Yeah. Can intellectual or creative activity using AI really be called human creativity, or is it something else entirely?
There was a specific example mentioned, wasn't there, about academic work?
Yes. The issue of students and researchers using tools like ChatGPT to, well, essentially write scientific articles, it massively blurs the lines of authorship.
Definitely.
And here's a really wild idea from one source.
Go on.
It discussed deep learning systems that use genetic programming. In these cases, the computer effectively writes its own code.
Okay.
And the source suggested that code, if it's untraceable to a human author, might actually be considered the system's property.
The AI's property.
Potentially. And even more, that code could perhaps be used to infer the AI's own intent.
Wow. The AI as its own programmer with intentions. That's mind-bending.
It is. Now, some argue for giving AI IP rights. They say it could support commerce, maybe even recognize a kind of natural right for the AI.
And what's the counter-argument?
The big one is, what does the AI gain from it? The whole point of IP is usually to reward human work, creativity, investment. Does an AI need or benefit from that in the same way?
It really shows how AI isn't just a new tool. It's challenging the very purpose of some of our legal structures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So shifting gears a bit now, away from the purely legal.
To the broader impacts.
Exactly. The sources also paint a pretty vivid picture of the socioeconomic shifts AI is driving, particularly in the labor market.
Right. Jobs are a big concern for many people. What do the sources predict?
A notable fall in routine jobs or jobs needing low computer skills. The forecast mentioned was a drop from about 40% of the workforce now to maybe 30% by 2030.
That's a significant chunk, 10% in just a few years.
It is, and this tends to drive wages towards the more complex, non-repetitive roles.
So more demand for high-skill jobs.
Yes, but while AI could theoretically boost overall income and productivity for everyone,
There's a catch.
the analysis suggests it's actually more likely to worsen income distribution, make inequality steeper.
That sounds like the labor market polarization risk they talk about.
Exactly that.
Ha.
Demand and salaries could skyrocket for highly skilled workers who can leverage AI effectively.
While middle and low-skilled workers.
They could face reduced pay or even unemployment. It polarizes the market.
Though, didn't one source mention some jobs might be harder to replace?
Yes, interestingly, some experts cited believe jobs needing sensory motor skills in non-standard, less predictable environments.
Like?
Think security guards, cleaners, gardeners, maybe cooks. Roles where adaptability and physical interaction in varied settings are key. AI might struggle more there, at least for a while.
Okay. But it's not just about individual jobs, right? The sources also warn about wider inequality.
Definitely. Social and digital inequality on a global scale. Developed countries are predicted to gain significantly more from AI applications.
How much more?
The figures mentioned were maybe a 20–25% increase for developed nations compared to just 5–15% for developing countries. A big difference.
It's a huge potential gap. And does it filter down to companies and people too?
Seems so. Companies that can adopt AI quickly, they might pull ahead, see cash flow increase, hire more specialists.
While those that can't keep pace.
They could fall behind fast, lose market share, face pressure for layoffs. It creates winners and losers at the corporate level too.
And for individuals, if you don't have the resources.
Exactly. Accessing AI's benefits, knowledge, better education, career opportunities, starting AI-powered businesses. It all depends heavily on your financial situation, your education level.
Even just having decent internet access.
Right. It risks creating this whole new wave of digital and social inequality, a new kind of class divide based on AI access and skills.
That's pretty concerning. Did the sources offer any solutions? Any policy ideas?
Thankfully, yes. They didn't just diagnose the problem. Several potential policy responses were discussed.
Like what?
Things like fundamentally restructuring education systems, shifting focus to skills. AI can't easily replace soft skills.
Hmm.
Complex problem solving, creativity, human relations.
Makes sense. Lifelong learning, too.
Absolutely crucial. Encouraging continuous upskilling, also strengthening social safety nets is seen as a must.
To cushion the blow for those displaced.
Yes, and economic diversification, moving economies away from sectors easily automated.
What about taxing AI? I've heard that mentioned.
That came up too. The provocative idea of taxing automation like a robot tax, partly to compensate for lost income tax revenue when human workers are replaced.
Interesting. Controversial, I imagine.
Very. And of course, the positive side. Actively creating new jobs in the AI sector itself, development, maintenance, oversight, ethics.
So lots of interconnected challenges, but also potential policy levers to pull.
Right. But requires rapid, innovative thinking from policymakers.
Okay, beyond the economic and legal shifts, the sources also flag some, well, more immediate dangers, right? Big threats.
Yes, definitely. One that was repeatedly identified as one of the biggest threats.
Let me guess, fake content, misinformation.
You got it. The creation of fake content and misinformation using AI, deepfakes.
This is where it gets genuinely worrying for me.
Me too. And the specific example cited in one source is chilling.
Which one was that?
The fake video appeal of Ukrainian President Zelensky that surfaced in 2022.
Oh, I remember that. Telling his army to surrender.
Exactly. Imagine the chaos, the potential loss of life, if that had been widely believed, even for a short time.
It's terrifying. And the danger isn't just political manipulation, is it?
No, not at all. This kind of technology risks eroding trust in, well, everything we see. Videos, photos.
Which are vital evidence in court and journalism.
Precisely. If you can't trust visual evidence anymore, that's a huge problem for society.
So how do we fight back? What did the sources suggest for prevention?
A mix of things, technical solutions, like developing anti-deepfake tools, but also strengthening verification procedures by governments, social media platforms, news media, making it harder for fakes to spread.
And public awareness.
Crucial. Constantly educating the public about the existence and dangers of deepfakes, teaching critical media consumption skills.
Are governments actually doing anything legally?
Yes, responses are emerging globally, which is promising.
Like where?
The EU is pushing tech platforms Google, Facebook, YouTube to detect and label AI-generated content as part of fighting disinformation. China requires labeling of such videos.
What about the U.S.?
Some states are acting. California, for instance, prohibits distributing fake content about politicians close to an election. France has laws sanctioning editing speeches or images without consent.
So policymakers are taking it seriously. That's somewhat reassuring.
It shows the problem is recognized. The sources also briefly touched on AI risks in other critical fields.
Military uses were mentioned, I think.
Briefly noted, yeah. But more detail was given on risks in the health sector.
Ah, right. What kind of risks?
Things like low-quality training data leading to misdiagnosis by an AI.
That could be life-threatening.
Absolutely. Also, potentially higher healthcare costs, the sheer complexity of understanding why an AI model made a certain diagnostic decision, the black box problem.
And security. Data.
Major concerns there, too. Cybersecurity vulnerabilities, confidentiality breaches, the potential for criminal hacking of health AI systems, and the misuse of sensitive personal health data. Lots of pitfalls.
Wow. Okay, so all these challenges we've discussed, who's liable, who owns the creations, who benefits economically, the risks of misuse and misinformation.
Yeah.
They all seem to lead back to perhaps the most foundational and maybe the most complex question the sources explore.
Which you mentioned at the start.
Exactly. Should AI have legal personhood?
Ah, the big one, yeah. It's a question that's gained significant attention recently. The whole issue of AI's legal status, what rights, what responsibilities, how we hold it accountable, if at all.
Is there any consensus in the sources?
Not really consensus, more like strong opposing viewpoints. Some researchers and scholars cited do believe granting legal personality to AI is necessary.
Why necessary?
They suggest that with personhood, AI entities could, for example, become parties to contracts, own property, bear legal responsibilities, much like corporations do today.
Okay. But there's a counter-argument.
A strong one, yes. Others argue forcefully that AI should not be granted legal personality.
Their reason.
That it would dangerously blur the line between humans and non-humans. That it could undermine fundamental human rights and the concept of citizenship. Their stance is clear. AI should remain a tool under human control.
So the sources draw a distinction here
Yeah.
between different types of persons.
They do, and it's helpful. They distinguish between a natural person that's a living human being based on capacities like consciousness, sentence.
Us.
Right.
Yeah.
And a juridical person.
What?
That's an entity recognized by law as having certain rights and liabilities. Corporations are the classic example.
And corporations gained rights over time, didn't they?
Exactly. Like certain free speech rights through political spending or equal protection under the law in some contexts. It shows legal personhood can evolve.
So where does AI stand right now, according to the sources? Is it considered a person?
Generally, no. The current status quo is that AI is not recognized as a person, legally speaking.
But what about that robot, Sophia? Didn't Saudi Arabia give her citizenship?
Ah, yes, the Sophia case. That made huge headlines in 2017. Saudi Arabia did grant her citizenship.
So a robot citizen.
Yes, a first. But the sources are careful to clarify. That was citizenship, a specific national status, not the broader concept of legal personhood with inherent rights and responsibilities that's being debated globally.
Got it. A symbolic gesture, maybe, more than a legal precedent for personhood itself?
Perhaps. Sophia herself apparently said she was very honored and proud for this unique distinction.
And didn't the European Parliament look into this idea too? Electronic personhood.
They did explore it, but interestingly, they ultimately decided against pursuing it.
Why?
They seem to have shifted focus towards more concrete regulations, like the EU AI Act and specific AI liability proposals, rather than opening the philosophical can of worms that is personhood.
Okay, so why is this debate even happening? What are the potential benefits the sources mention for treating AIs as persons?
Well, several arguments are put forward. One is that if AI had rights and obligations, it could directly participate in legal processes, sue or be sued, for instance.
That could simplify things in some ways, maybe.
Potentially. Another argument is that it might help integrate AI into society more smoothly, within a clear, transparent legal framework.
What else?
There's an idea that if AI had self-determination through personhood, it could lead to wider adoption across society, maybe more equitable social capacity building.
And you mentioned wealth distribution earlier.
Yes, that's another interesting argument, that recognizing AIs as persons could lead to fairer wealth distribution. The idea is the value AI generates might disperse more broadly instead of just accumulating with its owners.
Okay. Any other potential upsides?
Well, there's the ethical argument. Personhood might prevent us from harming potentially sentient AI entities in the future.
The protection for the AI itself.
Right. And simply having the debate forces us to reflect deeply on AI's ethical and moral implications, which is necessary anyway.
Some sources even listed specific rights AI might have.
Some proposals did, yes. Things like the right to self-expression, maybe even drafting their own code. The right to life, interpreted as requiring shelter and power.
Property rights, too.
Yes, the right to own property, the right to be recognized as a person before the law, with legal representation, equality, and even the right to seek freedom from servitude.
Freedom from servitude. Wow. Those are significant potential benefits. But the sources must also raise serious potential harms or downsides.
Oh, absolutely. Big ones. The risk of an existential threat is often mentioned first.
How so?
Superintelligent AIs, if granted personhood and rights, could potentially amass wealth, information, and productivity far beyond human capacity. If their motivations aren't aligned with ours, well, that's the existential risk scenario.
Right. The Skynet scenario, basically?
Sort of. Less dramatically, there's the worry that human natural persons could simply be displaced socially, economically, politically by competition with tireless, potentially rights-bearing AI, leading to massive social instability.
And what about accountability? Wouldn't personhood help there?
Counterintuitively, some sources argue it could make accountability worse. It could create another layer to hide behind. Bad human actors or organizations could exploit AI actions or disavow responsibility by blaming the person of the AI.
Ah, I see. It deflects blame.
Potentially. Then there's the risk of creating a false equivalence, confusing being human-like in behavior with being truly intelligent or a person.
And the danger there.
That we end up with an underspecified, shallow definition of person that could risk injustice, especially for vulnerable human populations, the very young, the elderly, people with disabilities, the neurologically divergent who might not fit that narrow AI-centric definition.
That's a really important point. The definition of person itself is at stake.
Exactly. And some legal proposals for an in-between status for AI. Some sources see this as a really disturbing trend.
Why disturbing?
They draw uncomfortable parallels to historical concepts of slavery. One source explicitly called it slavery 2.0, creating a class of beings with some rights but not others, designed to serve.
That's a heavy comparison.
It is. And finally, there's the huge barrier of corporate interests. Granting AI personhood clashes fundamentally with the profit motive driving much AI development.
How does that clash work?
Well, if an AI is a person, does it deserve wages? Fair working conditions? What happens if an AI is expected to work off the massive cost of its own development? Does that become a form of contractual servitude, echoing historical exploitation?
Right. It raises enormous questions about labor, markets, competition.
Huge questions. Is it fair competition if companies employ tireless AI persons working 2047 for potentially no wages? What does that do to human jobs and market dynamics?
So stepping back from this whole deep dive, looking at everything the sources covered, it seems clear there's no doubt AI brings immense potential. But the socioeconomic risks and these incredibly complex legal challenges are, well, they're equally significant.
That feels like a fair summary. A core takeaway, for me at least, is the desperate need for adequate legal frameworks.
Our traditional methods just aren't cutting it.
Not really. For liability, for IP, for data processing,
For combating fake content, traditional legal and administrative tools often seem ineffective for this totally new, unprecedented field.
And economically, the concerns are just as pressing.
Absolutely. The impact on the labor market, potential mass unemployment, the deepening of income and social inequality, the issue of technological monopolies.
And the challenge to basic concepts like taxation.
All of it.
Yeah.
The sources really underline the urgency here. Countries, and really the global community, need to urgently rethink employment policies, tech monopolies, taxation, all in light of AI.
And develop appropriate new management and regulatory mechanisms fast.
Exactly. And these aren't isolated challenges, are they? They're all deeply interconnected.
Which means we need comprehensive solutions.
And international cooperation. This isn't something one country can solve alone.
Definitely not. So that leaves us and you listening with a lot to ponder, I think.
Here's a final thought, based on everything we've discussed. If this whole debate around AI personhood is forcing us to fundamentally reevaluate what it even means to be a person, and it's challenging our most basic legal and economic systems, what does that tell us? What does it tell us about the adaptability of human society, our governance structures, in the face of truly transformative technology like this? And maybe the biggest question of all, how can we possibly ensure that the incredible potential benefits of AI are something truly shared by everyone in society, not just a select few?